Come on.
Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Sunday for Sunday, October 29th, 2023. We've got another great show for you this week. We've got the Legal Eagles standing by to help break things down in terms of what's happening on Capitol Hill. And geez, if you read the paper every day, you know there's a lot going on. And then Oliver Rennick of the Schwab Network joins us to help break down markets. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of BRN Sunday.
I'll be here when you are ready. Roll with the changes.
Well, we're going to kick the show off, as we always do, with a look at what's happening on Capitol Hill. Wow, a lot going on. And here to break it all down, you know them as the Legal Eagles. David Levine and Kevin Walsh are both principals with Groom Law Group. That's an employee benefits law firm based in Washington, D.C. Eagles, great to talk to you. Thanks for stopping by the program this morning.
It's great to be on the program, Jeff. And, this week, the House of Representatives got a speaker, and I think we're going to talk to you about some, new ideas that are being bounced around for retirement legislation.
Yeah, David, miracles do happen. We have a speaker of the House finally. Last weekend, we talked about how there were things up in the air and what the impact would be to the retirement legislation that could possibly happen in 2023 and into 2024. Some good news, but I know you want to take us through maybe kind of what some of the new legislation is that's being offered.
Right. Well, that's exactly it, Jeff. We have a speaker now. So there's new legislation that's been proposed. It's basically bipartisan. It's the Retirement Savings for Americans Act. In essence, the never-ending discussion that we've had over the years is how do you bridge the coverage gap? And for those who have heard this term over and over, I apologize. For those who haven't, in short English, it's basically no matter how hard we try, there's a chunk of the American population that don't get covered by employer-provided savings programs for their retirement. And that's because sometimes it's very small employers who can't have plans, which was part of the idea behind PEPs, which people are still deciding whether PEPs have or have not achieved improvements on that. That's jury's still out. Separately, you had the state IRA programs, the auto IRA. There's been proposals for federal auto IRAs over time, but right now the states have really taken the lead. A significant number of them have required IRA programs if you're an employer that does not have an employer-sponsored plan, and each of them are a little different, but that's the basic premise of them all. And the RSAA would be another arrow in the quiver. And already, just to lay the background on this a little bit more, already we have seen that there are divisions. There are some trade groups who've already come out strongly against the RSAA, and some organizations have said they're in favor, but it's certainly early. We have a lot of other legislation higher in the priority list, apparently, to members of Congress, even though I never understand why retirement shouldn't have a bill a week, but I'll live with that. And we need something to talk about, Jeff. And the RSAA is another piece of legislation. It's basically for full and part-time employees who lack an employer-sponsored plan, get enrolled at 3% of their income. They can change their levels, they can opt in or out. There would be a federal contribution of I believe it's a 1% non-elective and a 4% matching contribution. And the money it would be portable, and it would be investments like the thrift savings plan. The immediate question is, why are people reacting this way? Well, as we know, we have a voluntary private retirement system, and there's a lot of discussion of should you have something tilting the field one way or another, and there are different views on that at this point. As you know, on the Eagles here, we try not to get in the middle of advocating one way or another. Mm-hmm. But clearly there's going to be a lot of debate, because the real key thing, and I'll wrap up on this, about RSAA and all these proposals, is who should be providing retirement benefits? Where should responsibility sit? We have an employer-provided system now, and there's a lot of support for it, but there are those who say there's gaps that might be filled outside of it. So let's see where the dialogue goes. Jeff, Kevin?
Kevin, I want to pitch it to you and react to David's comments and infuse some of your own.
Yeah, so I mean, I think David hit on the key points of the program, and one thing that I want to heavily discount from what he said was the default contribution rate in the draft legislation, the default match in the draft legislation, the default kind of federal government contribution. One thing to highlight with draft legislation is that were this to move forward, were this to be part of a federal package, of a big package, it would need to be paid for, and so. I think when we look at this, we can look at whether we think it's generous or not generous, but it'll end up being dialed up or down depending on tax revenue that can be found to offset it. So I mean, in some ways, what I'm looking at this as is it's the federal government is saying they'll run largely a kind of a bare bones defined contribution plan for folks who don't have access to one through their employer. And so as we watch legislation like this, I think we've got to be mindful of, what impact will this have on employers offering plans generally? Could it discourage them from offering plans? Could it provide an incentive to offer more generous plans or things to think about? And then, what impact will this have on innovation? Because, the 401k space, we saw a move to daily record keeping over a 20-year period. We saw moves to target date funds. And, even now when David and I talk with our clients, we're seeing folks who are talking about innovative things in their plans. And if this proposal does go forward, I think we'd hope to see it in a way that wouldn't, stifle innovation or that wouldn't, become so homogenous that others feel like they've got to copy it exactly. So I think those are my key takeaways with this. It is in the proposal stage. If it was going to move forward, we would expect it to be part of a larger package. And, where we are at this point in 2023, it's tough to see a package coming together this year.
Yeah, and just to kind of build on that, I mean, there was so much going on. It took 3 weeks or 4 weeks to get a Speaker of the House. That person helps drive the agenda. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on domestically in the U.S. I mean, David, Kevin, I guess to Kevin's point, really, this kind of teased things up, I guess, for 2024. Here we are at the end of October before Halloween, and it just seems highly unlikely that we'll get anything focused on retirement with so much else going on. Sorry, Dave.
Well, no, Jeff, you're 100% right. And I think part of that is, I could jokingly say it's time for our retrospective year look back right now, but
I think we've got a lot of regulations still coming, David.
That's true.
We've got a lot of regulation between here and the end of the year. We can't look back quite yet.
Yeah, that's right. Jeff, to your introduction, it's going to be, we'll always have litigation, but there's going to be a lot of regulation to talk about in a bit. Maybe I'll just stop there because you've given us enough time, as always.
And you know what? There will be celebration on the Broadcast Retirement Network. David Levine, Kevin Walsh, always great to talk to you. I see I added another H in, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. We'll enjoy the jubilation.
All right. See you guys. Bye-bye.
Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Welcome back. Recently I sat down with UC San Francisco's A.J. Holmgren to discuss how healthcare systems are charging for e-visits and e-messages. Let's give it a listen. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Dr. A.J. Holmgren is with UC San Francisco. Dr. Holmgren, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about e-visits, because this became the technology has existed for quite some time, but this really became very popular during the pandemic, sir, and a lot of people took advantage.
You're absolutely right. Most patients have been able to message their physician or some member of their care team for over a decade at this point. But prior to the pandemic, the rate that patients actually used this was really, really low. It was really classified or clustered in almost entirely amongst younger patients, those with higher socioeconomic status, people who are more likely to be using smartphones, et cetera. Whereas when the pandemic hit, I think there was a broad awareness that this capability existed. And between a desire to not have to go see your physician in person, but still be able to see them and to receive medical care, the use of messaging your physician via the patient portal really exploded. And we saw an almost 150% increase from the pre-pandemic level.
Yeah, and I like it. I think as a patient, I like it because I don't necessarily have to pick up the phone and call the doctor or the physician's assistant. I can just input it. But this probably creates a lot of work administratively. If I have 100 patients and I'm a doctor, that's quite a bit of volume in terms of managing email on top of the administrative and internal emails I probably already get from my physician's practice.
That's absolutely correct. And the analogy that I always like to make is, imagine if you worked at an hourly job and your boss told you, yeah, you definitely have to answer all of your emails, but you can't do it at work. You have to do that at lunch or in the evening while you're eating dinner or watching TV. These are things that don't count as billable. And that's essentially what we've asked our physician workforce to do. The majority of physicians in the United States get paid on a fee-for-service or volume-based metric. And these e-visits or these messages are, for the most part, prior to the pandemic, not reimbursable. So we've really put a huge burden on our already strained physician workforce to do a bunch of this messaging, almost all of which occurs in this after hours, outside of hours, an uncompensated way, which is really a lot of additional stress to a group of clinicians who were already dealing with the impact of the pandemic and other demands on their time.
As you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the message I just sent my physician yesterday, and now I'm actually starting to feel bad that I sent him a physician, which was important from my perspective. Dr. Holmgren, there was a movement afoot to begin to charge for these patient messages or e-visits. How pronounced is that? Is it across all the systems in the United States, or are we just starting to see that begin the rollout?
Yeah, I think, right now, unfortunately, there's very little data published out there about nationally how prominent this is. What we can say is a number of large prominent healthcare systems, including UCSF Health, Michigan Medicine, Johns Hopkins, the Cleveland Clinic, have all started these types of programs, really hoping to give their physician workforce, their clinician workforce, some ability to receive compensation for the sort of asynchronous messaging work that they do, because there's a growing recognition that this is care delivery. And if you are writing a prescription or giving medical advice in the form of written emails rather than, verbally face-to-face, there's really not that much difference there. And so the hope is that, I think, patients really value this. I think a lot of physicians really value this, because if they can deliver the care that a patient needs in a faster, more convenient format, that's a win-win for everybody. The only problem is, what happens when this is uncompensated and it all sort of spills over into your personal time and there's sort of a never-ending demand for sort of clinical advice from the clinicians.
Yeah, it's really about a balancing act.
Well, that's certainly an important topic and something we're going to have to keep watching on the network. And I want to thank A.J. Holmgren for stopping by BRN AM recently. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Sunday. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Well, hey, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well,
then visit our website. Hey, we're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.